Hello everyone, and welcome to Earth Archives. You've probably heard of the Crusades, but did you know that in Eastern Europe there was once a battle hailed as the most heroic clash of the Middle Ages? It's called the Battle of Grunwald. Today, we're not just diving into the brutal clashes on the battlefield. We're going back to the very roots. How did the Teutonic Knights transform from protectors of the Holy Land into ruthless conquerors? And how did Lithuania, once a cluster of forest-dwelling tribes, grow into a major power capable of reshaping the fate of Eastern Europe? If you enjoy deep, epic historical narratives like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, give us a like, and share it with fellow history lovers. Also, feel free to let us know in the comments, what obscure but fascinating piece of history would you like us to explore next? Today, we're delving into a tale filled with smoke, blood, and fire, the dramatic history between the Teutonic Order and Lithuania, especially the decisive clash known as the Battle of Grunwald. It sounds like a scene from a movie, but it was a very real event, one that completely changed the course of Eastern European history. Want to know why this battle was so important? Don't rush to the battlefield just yet. First, let's get to know the Lithuanians and the Teutonic Knights. The backstory is even more fascinating. When we talk about the Lithuanians, we actually have to start in the Middle East. Sounds like the opening line of a time travel drama, doesn't it? Wait a second, isn't Lithuania in northeastern Europe? What does it have to do with the Middle East? Hold on, this is really a story of human migration and the spread of ancient peoples. Imagine this. A group of ancient peoples sets out from the Middle East, journeying across countless mountains, crossing vast rivers and lakes, slowly making their way toward northeastern Europe. Eventually, they settle along the shores of the Baltic Sea. The ancestors of the Lithuanians were one of these migrating groups. This journey was an epic migration, an odyssey that connects and shapes the world map as it was 1,000 years ago. The name Lithuania comes from a river called the Vytautas River, which became the heart of their early life, almost like the cradle of their civilization. From the 6th to the 9th century AD, the land of Lithuania was still a blend of wetlands and forests. The environment seemed calm, yet full of vitality. People lived off the land through farming, fishing, and hunting, a self-sufficient way of life. Picture those early Lithuanian villages. Firelight flickering beneath thatched roofs. Villagers gathered together, telling stories of their ancestors and the spirits they worshipped. By the 10th century, however, the situation in Eastern Europe began to shift dramatically. What had once been a relatively stable region now faced unprecedented challenges. Russian armies pushed southward again and again, like fierce tigers, launching repeated invasions into Lithuania, aiming to bring this rich and fertile land under their control. At the time, Lithuania was dense with forests and threaded with rivers, making it a prime target for rival powers. But the Lithuanians did not back down. Instead, they began to unite, organizing their own defense forces and vowing to defend their homeland. As the 12th century unfolded, the turmoil in this land grew even more intense. Both Poland and Russia, the two major powers in the region, had their eyes on Lithuania, each seeking to expand its influence. This made an already complex geopolitical landscape even more volatile. Internal conflicts also escalated. Tensions and clashes between tribes became more frequent, and Lithuania faced unprecedented internal and external pressures. Yet it was precisely in this time of adversity that the Lithuanians began to rise. No longer content with passive defense, they started taking the initiative, actively expanding their territory and influence. Like a sleeping lion awakened, the Lithuanians, with resilience and cunning, pushed outward, striking back at invaders and asserting their presence in the region. During this time, their leaders demonstrated extraordinary leadership, steadily uniting internal factions, consolidating resources, and building a stronger military, laying the groundwork for the rise of a powerful state. By the 13th century, Lithuania's story had entered a brand new chapter. From scattered farming communities nestled among forests and rivers, the Lithuanians began transforming into one of Europe's early feudal states. It was a turning point, a time filled with both great challenges and bold opportunities. Imagine Lithuania at that moment, a dark horse steadily gaining strength, beginning to make its mark on the vast expanse of Eastern Europe. As the political structure gradually solidified, the Lithuanians not only continued their traditional livelihoods of agriculture and fishing, but more importantly, began to establish a well-organized military. This army was not just for defense. It was built with a clear intention of expanding outward. While protecting their homeland, the Lithuanians also aimed to secure a place on the power map of Eastern Europe. The formation of this army marked a major transition in Lithuanian society, from a loose confederation of tribes to a more disciplined and structured feudal system. For Europe at the time, this was a significant political signal. Beyond military development, Lithuania also began to take shape as a political entity. A clearer ruling class and administrative system started to emerge. The nation's leaders demonstrated a growing skill in diplomacy, navigating the complex and shifting landscape of international politics. At this point, Lithuania was no longer a small, vulnerable state constantly on the defensive. It had matured into a capable power, adept at balancing competing interests. Poland and Russia, the two long-established regional giants, became neighbors Lithuania had to contend with. Through strategic marriages, alliances, and military tactics, Lithuanian rulers skillfully preserved their nation's independence and cultural identity. In the early 14th century, Lithuania stood at a crossroads in history, facing two powerful enemies that loomed like beasts of prey. To the east, the Orthodox forces of Russia, and to the west, the Christian military orders, most notably the cold, ruthless, and seemingly unstoppable Teutonic Knights. These two forces did more than surround Lithuania geographically. They exerted intense pressure on the country religiously, culturally, and politically, plunging the region into a period of unprecedented turmoil and crisis. Let's start with the eastern threat, the Russian powers. At the time, Russia was steadily building a strong system of principalities, using Eastern Orthodox Christianity as a unifying force to rally the population and legitimize its expansion. With religion and politics closely intertwined, Russia sought to extend both its influence and territory. Although Lithuania remained a pagan nation, it had no choice but to confront the growing military threat from its powerful neighbor. Russian forces frequently penetrated Lithuanian borders, raiding and plundering resources. These incursions posed a serious threat to Lithuania's stability and security, forcing the country to constantly defend its frontier. The Teutonic Knights from the west represented an entirely different kind of threat. This order was, at its core, a religious military monastic order founded in the 12th century. Originally, their mission was to protect Christian pilgrims and spread the Catholic faith. But before long, they evolved into an aggressive force of eastward expansion. The Teutonic Knights had a very clear goal: to Christianize the pagan peoples along the Baltic coast by any means necessary. This included not only military conquest, but also cultural assimilation. The story of the Teutonic Order begins in 1192, when they were founded as a special kind of military religious order. At first, their mission was focused on the protection of German pilgrims and crusaders during the Crusades, especially in the key fortress city of Acre in the Middle East. They were driven by both fervent religious conviction and military discipline, a force that seemed to shine with divine purpose as it moved across the smoke-filled battlefields, a holy army clad in armor, wielding both sword and scripture. The highest leader of the Teutonic Knights was known as the Grand Master. The first Grand Master was named Sibrand, a military commander loyal to the Holy Roman Emperor, skilled both in strategy and deeply committed to the order's religious mission. At first, the Teutonic Knights served as guardians of the Crusader states in the Middle East, protecting the faith and safeguarding the passage for Europeans traveling to the Holy Land. However, as time passed and the Crusades gradually declined, the Teutonic Order faced pressure to redefine its purpose. They turned their attention to the distant northern regions of Eastern Europe, lands filled with pagan peoples, yet to be conquered by Christianity, especially the Lithuanians and other tribes along the Baltic coast. This shift marked a turning point that would reshape the entire historical landscape of Eastern Europe. After entering Eastern Europe, the Teutonic Knights swiftly established their strongholds and military bases. Under the banner of religion, they called upon knights to embark on expeditions into pagan lands. The order was not only a military force, but also a political entity, carrying out the dual mission of religious conversion and territorial control. Their strategy was clear and unwavering, to bring this barbaric eastern land into the Christian world, whether through peaceful conversion or by military conquest. However, the Teutonic Knights' ambitions soon faced strong resistance, especially from Lithuania, which was still a coalition of loosely united tribes. The Lithuanians not only skillfully employed guerrilla tactics, but also pursued a series of political alliances and negotiations in hopes of preserving their independence and cultural heritage. In the early 13th century, the Teutonic Knights received strong support from the Pope and the Holy Roman Emperor, launching a fierce expansion northward. This was not merely a military campaign, but a conquest plan deeply intertwined with religious and political goals. They built a series of formidable castles in East Prussia and along the Baltic coast, like steel fortresses, that firmly secured their control over these lands. These castles served not only as military bases, but also as centers for spreading the Catholic faith, acting as dual bastions of both religion and military power. The Teutonic Knights' expansion strategy was filled with cunning and determination. Their goal was not only to conquer land, but more importantly, to assimilate the pagan peoples, converting them into devout Christians. This held immense religious significance for Europe at the time, bringing more souls back to the Church and strengthening Catholic influence in Eastern Europe. The knights wore dazzling white armor emblazoned with black crosses on their chests, like a sacred sword cutting through the forests and swamps along the Baltic coast. Their actions were swift and ruthless, launching military attacks on pagan tribes to force them into baptism and adherence to church rules. However, the Lithuanians resisted fiercely, armed with rich experience in forest guerrilla warfare that posed a great challenge to the Teutonic Knights. This conflict between the two sides over faith and land was not merely a military confrontation, but a clash of cultures and values. The Teutonic Knights, waging their conquest in the name of a holy war, were both the bearers of European civilization and feared invaders to the peoples of Eastern Europe. Meanwhile, the Lithuanians steadfastly defended their land and beliefs, striving to resist this powerful foreign force. At the time, Lithuania was still a polytheistic society, practicing the ancient pagan traditions of the Baltic region, beliefs deeply rooted in their rituals and social structure. Faced with the forceful advance of Catholicism, the Lithuanians demonstrated remarkable resilience, as this struggle was not only about territory, but a life-or-death battle for their culture and soul. When the Teutonic Knights marched into Lithuania under the banner of holy war, attempting to impose religious transformation by force, the Lithuanians met the invaders fearlessly with unwavering determination. This conflict was far more than a simple military confrontation. It was a fierce clash of cultures and religions. The Teutonic Knights were notorious for their iron-fisted tactics and highly organized military system. On the battlefield, they showed no mercy. Burning, looting, and slaughtering became commonplace. Their sole objective was clear: to eliminate the pagans and firmly establish Christian dominance across Eastern Europe. Backed by the Pope and the Holy Roman Empire, they had abundant resources and formidable combat power, exerting immense pressure on Lithuania. However, the Lithuanians were not lambs to be slaughtered. They knew their homeland's forests, swamps, and rivers intimately and skillfully employed guerrilla tactics to launch fierce counterattacks against the knights. These tactics were like ghosts in the forest, striking the enemy unexpectedly and then swiftly disappearing into the dense woods, causing the Teutonic Knights to suffer many grueling battles. The Lithuanian guerrilla warfare not only drained the Knights' manpower and morale, but also turned the conflict into a prolonged and brutal stalemate. By 1410, the long-standing conflict finally erupted into a decisive battle that would rewrite history, the Battle of Grunwald, also known as the Battle of Tannenberg. It is no exaggeration to call it one of the largest and fiercest knightly wars of medieval Europe. This was no small skirmish. It was a united effort by the Kingdom of Poland and the Grand Duchy of Lithuania to confront the Teutonic Knights, then an almost invincible military and religious force in Eastern Europe. The armies of Poland and Lithuania formed a massive allied force, demonstrating astonishing combat power and unity from the number of soldiers to their command structure. Their goal was clear and resolute: to completely crush the Teutonic Knights and put an end to this iron-fisted religious military order's invasion and oppression of Eastern Europe. This battle was not only a military confrontation, but also the ultimate clash of beliefs, involving religion, culture, and even national identity. The Teutonic Knights represented the feudal order of Western Europe and the expansion of the Catholic Church. With sword and cross in hand, they sought to change the fate of this land by imposing their religious beliefs and political system. In contrast, the Lithuanians along the Baltic coast were the last bastion of the enduring polytheistic tradition, symbolizing national autonomy and cultural resilience. They refused to let foreign powers rewrite their history. This confrontation was charged with tension and rich with historical drama. On the day of the battle, the entire battlefield resembled a boiling furnace. The clash of swords echoed endlessly, horses' hooves thundered across the soft, muddy ground, and clouds of dust mixed with blood painted a grim and vivid picture. The knights of the Teutonic Order, clad in shining steel armor, wielded heavy, razor-sharp longswords. They were like moving fortresses, impenetrable and imposing. Yet, facing the united forces of Poland and Lithuania, their pride and confidence were gradually eroded by wave after wave of fierce assaults. Lithuanian archers, agile and swift, moved deftly across the battlefield, launching rapid attacks that the Teutonic Knights found hard to counter. Supported by the mobility of light cavalry, they continuously disrupted the enemy's formations, forcing the heavily armored Teutonic infantry to struggle to keep up. Meanwhile, the Polish heavy cavalry charged like fierce tigers descending from the mountains, repeatedly launching powerful assaults that broke through the knights' defenses. Amidst the clash of blood and fire, the flashes of swords and blades seemed to be writing an epic that would change the course of history. Every collision in this battle was a moment of life or death. The soldiers fought not only against their enemies, but also for their beliefs, their homeland, and their national honor. As the battle progressed, the Teutonic Knights gradually found themselves in trouble. Their once invincible order began to waver. Ultimately, this once mighty knightly order suffered a crushing defeat on the battlefield of Grunwald, dealing a fatal blow to their prestige and power. This battle was not only a decisive military victory, but also a symbol of the awakening of Eastern European national spirit. It demonstrated to the world how the alliance between Poland and Lithuania united to resist foreign invasion and defend their land and culture. The Battle of Grunwald became a powerful emblem of their joint struggle against oppression and their pursuit of freedom. It profoundly altered the power dynamics of Eastern Europe and shaped the future course of the entire region's history. This history teaches us that medieval Eastern Europe was far more than a simple religious war. It was a complex, multi-layered struggle involving politics, culture, military power, and faith. The Teutonic Knights' ruthless campaigns not only heightened tensions in Eastern Europe, but also inadvertently accelerated Lithuania's transformation from a pagan society to a Christian one. This shift helped the once fragmented tribes gradually consolidate into a strong feudal state, ultimately rising to become a significant political and cultural force in European history. From a certain perspective, this conflict can be seen as a clash of civilizations. On one side stood the Teutonic Knights, driven by a religious mission, well-equipped and highly organized. On the other side were the Lithuanians, steadfast in their traditions, followers of polytheism, and fiercely resilient. This contradiction was not merely a contest of weapons and tactics, but a direct confrontation between different values, ways of life, and belief systems. Ultimately, this struggle became a decisive force shaping the geopolitics of Eastern Europe, profoundly rewriting the political landscape of the continent for centuries to come. It can be said that the Teutonic Knights evolved from religious crusaders into a dominant political power in Eastern Europe, while Lithuania grew from a marginalized pagan tribe into an important European kingdom. The rivalry between the two was not only a battlefield contest, but also a competition over cultural identity and national destiny. This classic example of a civilizational clash reveals the depth and complexity of history, and reminds us that many seemingly straightforward religious or military events often conceal much deeper political and cultural intertwinings. In summary, the Battle of Grunwald and the saga of the Teutonic Knights in Lithuania are not only legendary chapters of Eastern Europe, but also crucial episodes in the evolution of European civilization. When iron and fire intertwined to write history, and when the ruthless knights clashed with the resilient pagans, history was rewritten, and the future map of Europe was forever altered. This story deserves our careful reflection, as it belongs not only to the past, but continues to shape the culture and identity of modern Eastern Europe. The Battle of Grunwald reveals how a forgotten history quietly transformed the map and fate of an entire region. It was not just a victory for Lithuania and Poland, but a defining moment for the awakening of Eastern European autonomy and spirit. If you enjoyed today's deep dive into history, please subscribe to the channel, like and share this video, and leave a comment telling us what part of this story shocked you the most, or what lesser-known yet fascinating medieval tales would you like to hear next. Don't forget to share this video with friends who love history, war, and culture, so together we can bring these forgotten chapters back to life and share them with the world.